Okay, so good morning, everyone, once again. I would like to thank you all for being here and for coming to Banja Luka, those of you who are not from here. My name is Angela Pepic, and I will be your host and moderator for the most of the day today. I come from the University of Banja Luka. I had the Entrepreneurship and Technology Transfer Center here, and I'm also one of the persons in charge of the implementation of Horizon 2020 project, embedding RRI in Western Balkan countries, enhancement of self-sustaining R&I ecosystems, WBC RRI Net, with which you are more familiar as. So without further ado, I would like to invite our Vice Rector for Science and Research and University Development, Professor Miroslav Malinovic, to come to the fore and open today's event on open science and open access. Please.
Thank you, Angela. Dear professors, dear guests from abroad and from country, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and honor to welcome you all at the University of Banja Luka on behalf of our rector, Professor Gajanin, and the whole rector's board. I would like to point out that University of Banja Luka has been for sure one of the forerunners in this field in country, and I'm really glad that we are hosting this event with both online participants and you here in Banja Luka. I would like to congratulate the organizers, Angela and her team, for making this event happen. And I'm sure that the quality of the papers presented, of the presentations presented here, will contribute to the field overall. I didn't prepare anything special about the topic itself, since I honestly find the importance of the open science and the open access in the science very important per se. I'm architect myself, and I often find, so to say, not fair that among some fields of science, scientists act not very fair among each other, that we don't have, to be honest, in the architecture, but we are on the same path to really avoid those problems, and maybe in 2, 3, 5, 10 years have really better situation in general. Once again, I wish you fruitful work, great presentations, and also pleasant stay in Banja Luka. Thank you. And yeah, the last sentence, I want to officially open the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Rector. So without further ado, and without taking much of your precious time, especially because of our colleagues who are watching us online and following the sessions today, I would like to invite Ms. Monika Petrova from Regional Cooperation Council to present the regional initiatives for open science and open access in the Western Balkans.
First, allow me to present myself. I'm Monika Petrova. I recently joined the Regional Cooperation Council in the headquarters in Sarajevo. I'm right now an expert on human capital development and open science and research infrastructures is one of our portfolios. I'm here on behalf of my colleague Siniša Marčić, who is you might be all familiar with, and I'm very grateful that we could work together with him. So I just want to, before we start, I just want to make a couple of general remarks before presenting the actions that RCC is actually focusing on the recent years on open science and open access supporting. So if you could please help go on. Thank you very much. So one of the most, let's start that how we know with the importance of embracing the open science models and how challenging is actually it's not only for how challenging it is not only for the Western Balkans, for the most of the European EU countries. This is to make us all realize how the long path that we all have before us, and it doesn't mean that we do not have to strive forward. So this should not discourage the Western Balkans region for employing the initiatives. We want to ensure that sharing the research output, including knowledge, data, tools, and as early as possible in the research and innovation process is of most importance. Open research, because we have to all realize that open research infrastructures are crucially important to make scientific knowledge available in the long run. So let me present you what RCC has been doing for the past 5 years. And it started slowly in 2017 with establishing the regional working group on science. So far, we have participated in many meetings, and also the members of the working group, you all know that, is participating in the meetings of Commission expert groups on national points of reference on access and preservation of information at EU level. That is because RCC's role is to bridge the EU and the Western Balkans initiative, I mean, to bridge Western Balkans with the EU initiatives. We have been supporting the Western Balkans to follow the open science developed at the EU level ever since. And with such in 2020, which is a thing that we start actually, it's like the first big milestone, is the open access research infrastructure in the Western Balkan support program, introduced and implemented with the help of the RCC. And with this program, we guided the presentation of a tailor-made open access policies in the selected RNIs in the Western Balkans. What is important to note here that with these 21 selected RNIs, we trained management, administrative and research staff to introduce principles of the open access. But at the same time, this was the first time ever any research organizations in the region developed their open access policies. And what is still missing is that even in some places their open access policies, they're still very scattered, or their development they're still undeveloped. But why is important? Because developing the open science practices in the higher organization, in the public research organization, is still work in process, but it is one of but this is sorry for me for not being so fluent in this because this is my first time joining you. But you're aware why the open science practices and open access initiatives are important. What's important here is our role, that what we are trying to do is encouraging more of our regional partners to embrace and develop those practices, because we wanted to assist the infrastructures, the research infrastructures in the best possible way. We brokered in that sense, we brokered the regional agreement on the protocol of open access and research infrastructure in the Western Balkans in 2020. And with that protocol, we have established the network of the open access and research infrastructure in the Western Balkans. With this, we are planning by the end of the year and the start of 2023 to support more kickstart joint regional actions. That's why we'll see later, but we have developed a specific webpage for the Balkan innovations, and we have an open access section there, but we'll speak a little bit later. I'll be very short. Trust me, I'll finish in a few minutes. But what's important here is that we started bridging the policymakers and the academia with our first joint meetings of the working groups on research and innovation and open science and the regional network of open access research infrastructures in the Western Balkans. And we had a very fruitful and very honest discussions during this first meeting. It will be a second joint meeting by the end of the year. We will announce it in a few weeks. And what we found out there is that it's really, we need to enhance the sustainable business academia cooperation models. And we need to promote more of the opportunities by the EU funding programs. You know, all those EU funding programs, but this is where also the role of this project is coming. And we want to very much applaud you for bridging and bringing together different stakeholders. And this is exactly the idea of today's events, is to activate effective way to contribute between. We want to encourage as well to promote more projects. And with this, we want, speaking about your project as well, this is where the Horizon Europe Open Science comes. And this part of the Horizon Europe is a driver for change in the region, which is one of the top 5 priority initiatives. And when we are talking about acquiring EU funds, you know that mentioning and the open science is actually, if a particularly important, your project, your future eventual project to be funded is a collaboration with the open science. We have been promoting those initiatives, EOSCs, NIFOS, and ORI publishing platforms, but as well as we are participating in the UNESCO recommendations on open science. And as of this year, we would like to encourage you to join those recommendations for UNESCO Open Science. They're usually annual, and you could participate online. With our idea of promoting targeted efforts for particular support actions and to encourage the growth in the region's ecosystems. And we have designed several promotional tools, such as the Butterfly Innovation and Business Forum, which the first one happened last year, had been held last year. And in November, there'll be the second edition. We will also promote this, and we will share invitation with you. We are planning it to be 2 days. Most probably the venue and the exact day are still to be seen, but will be shared shortly. And we would like to encourage you to follow us. It will be most probably a hybrid event as well. What we have also found that last year was the Butterfly Innovation Award. We had 6 winners from all the Western Balkans. Very young, very innovative teams, and I'm very glad. But because one of the teams actually that won the university award comes from Banja University, and those beautiful ladies that we have seen on our inauguration are here from the Taipei Air project. And after that, this is what I started speaking before, is our web page that we launched again a few months ago, the balkaninnovation.com. We already have a good cooperation with the WBCRRI.net project, and will be soon having their promoting their project on our webpage. There is a specific section dedicated for the open science, so please check it. Please help us, help you to contribute and to promote your projects and initiatives on a regional level. Anything that you find useful, initiatives, the success stories, regional dimension, we'll gladly promote your journey related to the open science. And you could contact me or our colleague, or through the RCC or through the webpage, and you could contribute to the website. And this is our idea, because we have a lot of different funding initiatives and different funding projects that are overlapping with their ideas, and we want to help you have all those information on one place. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to my ramble. Thank you for understanding. I'm coming from the political science before I enter this, and I feel this feels natural to be in a political science faculty, but at the same time, this is a little bit new to me. So thank you for welcoming me, and let's have a nice and fruitful discussions all together. And see you soon, hopefully on our next initiatives. Thank you.
For this overview of what RCC does in terms of the initiatives for making open science in the Western Balkans more visible, let's say. What I wanted to ask you, if as a start of a discussion maybe, and a couple of questions before we head to the next presentation, is the platform, the Western Balkan platform on research infrastructures and on open science. How does it work? How do you engage? So who is in this in these boards? I mean, I know it for myself, but I would like more people to know about it in a more wide perspective, especially those who are also following us online. So you can sit here because everything is also recorded on mic. So you don't have to.
So we know that we are in this platform. We have scientists, we have academia, we have representatives from all six, because also RCC is all inclusive initiative. And we have academia, we have the policymakers, starting from representatives from the ministries of respective institutions, from the governmental institution, from the economies. We have our partners from the EU funding, EU funded projects. And broadly, I mean, this is very broadly speaking, of course.
Okay. So is there any additional questions, maybe from the audience here? And I will also check the chat to see whether our colleagues who are following us online have anything. So any questions, comments?
Most probably people are already on the Balkan Innovation website, right?
Yeah, most probably. So, okay. Thank you. So let me now kindly invite our colleague from the University of Banja Luka, Mihailo Savic, who will present us the National Initiatives for Open Science in Europe and EOSC, because he is one of the EOSC promoters. So help him with this. So help me. Yeah. That's it. Good enough.
So, hi, my name is Mihailo Savic. I come from Faculty of Electrical Engineering, and I already see some familiar faces, so I apologize because you have seen most of this already. I'm member, basically coordinator for Bosnia and Herzegovina for NIFOS Europe project, which I will present, and also EOSC promoter for, again, Bosnia and Herzegovina. So basically a bit of geography. This is where we live and this is where we work. And there is a long string of projects in this region, which is partly EU, partly trying to be EU, eventually, hopefully, maybe someday. And some countries that are a bit far away from EU, but have some common stuff that ties us together. We have also had previous projects with Egypt, Jordan, etc., depending on the topic that we are trying to cover. So basically, this is some history. You can see that there is a plethora of EU projects, and the projects that have been highlighted in red are the ones that we have been part of. And you can see that there is continuation of projects, because this continues from 2014 to 2022. But we don't have a nice slide like this right now. So why are we doing what we are doing in this region? Well, basically, we need some help to be good enough to become EU. So in my eyes, it's not important to join the EU. That's the least fun part of this project and all the projects in this process. I think that it's much more important to be good enough to be wanted in the EU. So you're not trying to push yourself there, but they want you to join. And in order to become good enough to join EU, we really have to up our game. And one of the places that we were severely, and we are honestly still lacking, is IT infrastructures or e-infrastructures and the support it provides for all types of researchers and academia. So basically, we are trying to establish e-infrastructures in the region and promote them and evolve them. CFIRE and CERN established SARNet, which is NREN for Republic of Srpska, SIGRID, EGI Inspire, HPC, VI, SIEM, etc., created the first compute cluster in Bosnia and Herzegovina, introduced supercomputing to scientists in Bosnia and Herzegovina because there is not a single supercomputer in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And if you need one, you have to find the way to access it somewhere abroad. Well, these projects were that way to access it abroad. We did weather modeling and forecast for our hydrometeorology institutes. We introduced them to models and they basically became independent. They can produce their own forecasts and analysis. We did computational fluid dynamics. We have a lot of work done in digital cultural heritage, but we'll get to that a bit later. So about NIFOS Europe project, the name is National Initiatives for Open Science in Europe, since it's a very long name. Nobody calls it that. We called NIFOS Europe because NIF like for Europe, and also NIFOS is apparently Greek word for cloud. And since we are all doing cloud computing, it makes sense. It was part of InfraEOSC 5B projects. So basically, EOSC is a catch-all project which will cover all infrastructures, basically projects apart from GEANT in EU, so it seems. So basically, either you're a part of EOSC or you're nowhere to be seen, honestly, when it comes to infrastructures. So since we cannot be fully part of EOSC proper project due to many different things, EU recognized that it's impossible to cover all of the Europe with a single project. So they decided to launch a series of 5B projects, which are basically projects that tie together different countries. Original idea was regionally, but it's not so much regional. When you connect Spain and Germany, there is France between them. So it's not like a region. And France is not a part of that 5B project. So yeah, but idea is to connect researchers on a smaller scale and provide stepping stones so you can be onboarded or basically introduced to EOSC, which is something like being introduced to European Union, where you don't just appear there, but you have a very long process and chapters and whatnot to be able to join EU. We have 22 partners from 15 countries from the region. From the slide that you have seen, these are partners from all over the place.
Hello?
Yes?
Could you please, we cannot see the presentation. Can you please share?
We don't see the presentations. Do you see it now?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, so basically these partners for the online people are basically these partners here, and you can see that it covers most of the Southeast Europe, but also some parts that are on the other side of the Black Sea. So basically, main ingredients of this project are service operators and open science. Service operators basically provide research and technology. There are universities, there are various different institutions that provide infrastructures. And on the other side, we have open science, which is basically communities, scientific communities, as well as infrastructures that come with those scientific communities. Project has a lot of resources: CPU hours, GPU cores, GPU hours, 5 cores, grid resources, cloud resources, but this is not the important part of the project. yes, this is a nice thing to have, but you're not supposed to think about this, and we'll come back to this later. So main project aims are basically for us, for the University of Banja Luka, to support the development and inclusion of open science initiatives in EOSC, because we all strive to be in EOSC, but there is a process to basically finish before that, and we are here to help. We also promote EOSC like this and FAIR principles in science communities. I guess that you are all familiar with FAIR. Yes? No? Yeah, of course. And we, most importantly, provide technical and organizational support for inclusion of existing and new services to EOSC. So we'll come again back to this later, but the idea is that you are not supposed to worry about CPU hours, GPU hours, how to interconnect some services, how to connect your repository to EOSC, how to onboard your thematic service, drug discovery service to EOSC. We are here to help you do that because you're, I don't know, you're maybe a pharmacist, maybe a biologist or chemist. You're not supposed to do IT, you're supposed to do your thing. You do you, we'll help you become part of EOSC. So who do we onboard? We onboard generic services, which is basically boring. They are supercomputers. It's the stuff that you can buy from Google and Amazon. So it's not fun, but we have to have it because on top of those generic services, run thematic services, which are something that you can generally not just buy from Google, but they're research projects that provide some concrete service for specific or generic scientific community. So it's not so much about data storage that you can upload the huge file somewhere. You can do that anywhere you want on the internet. But if you want to have a image classification system that is very custom made, you cannot just go and buy it from Amazon. Amazon will say, oh, it's land. Oh, it's an apple, it's a person, it's a chair. But we want to be able to classify it more finely, and we'll see later on how. We also onboard repositories because it's very important for a repository not to be used by human beings. That's easy. We can basically create a huge Word document and type find and I don't know, scroll through it and read through it, but it's boring and it's very slow. Repositories need to be machine readable by other repositories and aggregators like OpenAir or whoever, so that you can go to a single place or basically any place and type in your query and get results from our local repositories in Banja Luka or Budapest. It doesn't matter. It should find all the data that is available to you as a scientist. And it should do it in a better or more controlled way than Google, because Google will return anything, and we want to return stuff of importance, which is curated, not just random thoughts on a Medium post or blog somewhere. So what else do? We do dissemination marketing, we promote our projects, we promote open science, FAIR principles, EOSC, and so on and so on. We work with end users, teach them how to use resources and teach them how to use services and teach them how to create basically their services on to make them available to other users. Because when we started cooperation a few projects back, we had a funny situation in one university in Bosnia and Herzegovina where they had a single laboratory, but they put a wall through the middle of the laboratory and they had two sets of computers which will never be used by the other part of the laboratory. It's the same chair, it's the same department of the faculty, but these 8 computers are ours, hands off, which is bad. Because the idea is, okay, you have 8, I have 8. We are not using it at the same time. So basically, if you are not using your 8, I can have 16, which is great. It was great at the time. Now we are talking about hundreds of thousands, but it doesn't matter. It's the principle that applies. So it's very important to have defined open access research infrastructure policies, and not just to have them, but to actually use them, implement them, and profit from them. So we are also working with providers through onboarding. And now What is EOSC? Oh, this slide looks very bad, but it's okay. EOSC is a grand vision. They will provide access to 1.7 million of Europe, EU's researchers, etc., etc., etc. This is a lot of text. It's too long. Nobody wants to read that. So basically, I have bolded the important parts. EOSC will provide free open services for data storage across disciplines. EOSC is a platform of European research. So what does that mean? It means it's here to stay. I am very afraid of Google because there is a site called Google Graveyard. Yeah, it collects all the services that Google has killed so far. And they launch a new service. This will be the best thing ever. They pour billions of dollars in it, spent 3 years trying to make profit, and they said, it's not making profit, or it's not making enough profit, and they kill it. And you have just flushed 3 years of your effort down the drain. I mean, among you who have been using internet in 1995, 7 or whatever, there is GeoCities. It does not exist. Tripod, Lycos, Yahoo is but the name only, I think. So many services have this. MySpace. Is it a thing anymore? I mean, for my kids, Facebook is not a thing anymore. Oh my God, it's worse than I thought. No, I'm not using. I'm off social networks, so I have no. I teach students how to create them, but I don't use them. So I'm like a dealer or something. But what's the point? We are trying, especially in digital cultural heritage, to digitize and serve and protect knowledge and information. And it has survived for thousands of years, and we are not that ambitious, but we want to make it last for decades or century. That would be great. But basically, if you turn around and like 20 years ago, what did exist of the top platforms today? TikTok did not exist or in any meaningful way 5 years ago. So basically, pegging your future of your digital cultural heritage on some platform that might not be here in 5 years, it's a great move. Not so much. So that's the importance of open science. I had another presentation, maybe I should have brought because I work at faculty that stores a lot of old data. So if I give you an 8-inch floppy drive, what are you going to do with it? You can use it as a fan. It's very nice, but not much. If I give you on a USB stick, something created in a Star Word or whatever, WordPerfect from 1997, 5.1b, excellent version, much better than Word, but nobody uses it. You cannot open the damn file. So now what? That's why you need to have open data and open science. Because when you find your old research, it's on a floppy drive from Amiga 500, and you have no idea how to read it. I have such floppies back home, not scientific research, I was a kid, but with my software, my programs, my pictures, whatever. You cannot use it without open data. And if you have like LibreOffice or any other open source software, it's magical in that it reads open source file formats from 40 years ago. I mean, if there are any mathematicians or physicians, tech is like, I don't know, people read it and write it without preprocessors or whatever. And you can always find something that will read tech. For Word, it's an excellent. Just this morning, we had a problem because the document edited in Word in some version, we opened it in another version, and there are no spaces between words. And yeah, I can see that you have been bitten by this bug as well. Excellent. That's an excellent way to preserve scientific research by losing spaces between words, because it's a trivial thing to repair. Even more, too long didn't read. EOSC is a safe space for you and your research and your research data. EOSC will possibly enable you to relax and carry on with your work. All these magic 3 letters acronyms should not worry you. Why do you care if it's an NVIDIA or AMD or, God forbid, Intel graphic card computing something in the background? You don't care. You just want to model social interactions or chemical reactions. It's not your job to think about what's behind that. In the same way that you don't care where the electricity for your laptop is coming from. And you have no idea. It might be coming from France.
No, it's ours.
Yeah, I know, but this is, but do you know why it's yours? Because you paid for it. And basically, sometimes we sell, sometimes we import electricity, and we don't care. I, as a consumer, don't want to care about that. So mifos.eu is our website where you can find everything about the project. Among other things, you can find service catalog, which is very important because it catalogs over 100 now, services that you can access, and each service has very clear like rules of participation, so acceptable use policy, guide how to get access to this service. It's linked to relevant access, open, if it's open access, the research infrastructure policy. In our case, it is because my institution developed our policy in cooperation with RCC, and it was not a simple, but a very rewarding process. We are better off after that. It takes some work, but then you can profit in the long run. All the events and news, link to partner sites, etc., etc., etc. Now, few very short projects that we did. Sherry Tools enables people from digital cultural heritage to take a series of photos and then reconstruct 3D object from a series of photos. So basically, it's a web-based tool. You don't install anything because, like I said, I don't want you to think about the technology. You upload images, start processing, and you get 3D object. This 3D object can be viewed online, but if you prefer to do it offline, you can do it offline. You can see it in different shadings, wireframe, solid, etc., etc. You can make a watertight model from it and print it on 3D printer if you want. We have done that. But then we said, okay, so it's a series of photos and it's an object. What's also an object? Well, basically terrain is an object that you take series of photos from drone, satellite, whatever. Can we reconstruct? Yes, of course, there are ready-made tools, but we wanted to make this a part of Sherry because people, when they are doing digs on archaeological sites, they want to have also possibility to have 3D reconstruction of the dig. So this is not a dig site. This is a mine clearance action site where they are basically removing mines from land. And I don't know if you can probably see these white squares. Those are the parts that have been cleaned, etc. And you can also see it in 3D, etc., etc. We can use it then for visual image search. So when you upload an image that you want to find similar image, our service will find a similar image from the catalog of the Museum of Republic of Srpska. Why? Because we have also digitized their catalog on muzej.info, and we have gone again through not simple but rewarding procedure because we had to go from handwritten, basically papers and sheets, through photographs from 1980s, 1990s, to 3D scanning that we provided for them to enable them to have a 3D model of an item available for them to research, because some of those items are precious, cannot be sliced, but they can be virtually sliced and examined in more detail. But in order to do that, we had to create metadata scheme for them, because it's not important just to have the data, but if I give you a table and it says first name, last name, you know what it is. You guess you know what it is, because you don't know first name, last name of who. But if you have a field that says date of what, when you have a field that says width of what, when you have a field that says ID4, which is something that happened to me, we had fields ID1, ID2, ID3, ID4, and for all the students in the faculty, ID4 was 0, except for 2 students. Why? Nobody remembers. That's why you have to have metadata scheme that describes what each field is, what values are, what control dictionaries you're using in order to be able to use that data for proper scientific research later on. Is it raw data? Is it processed? Is it verified? It's not the same thing. Then we create a digital repository for them. They entered all the data, and you can now browse it online. And you can also link from our visual search. So that's a part of the example how to interconnect different tools. We then created panoramas and virtual tours just for fun because it's a fun thing to do. We also do cooperation with the life sciences, and although you can 3D reconstruct, 3D scan some things, it's not a fast process, and sometimes you can do it faster with just 4 photos from different sides and use QR codes and automated machine recognition, and you can select points on these photos, and it will do some for the orthodontic dentistry. I don't know, not my type, but it does work. Then we created RSSC, or remote sensing scene classification system. Basically, Professor Isovic from my faculty did, which is use of machine learning, because machine learning is the buzzword. If you're not using artificial intelligence, you're not, is it
2 minutes?
2 minutes, plenty. So basically, it uses your data to create so we create very simple web user interface that you can upload your image. We will classify it easily, not so easily, or we can tag it and see, okay, it is medium residential, there is parking lot, maybe mobile home park, not really, but there is trees, grass, buildings, pavement, cars, bare soil, etc., etc. So can we improve? Can we connect these tools? Well, sharing reconstructs the terrain. We can classify terrain, but reconstructed terrain is huge and it's not one class because it has many things in it. So can we use open science and open data to connect these two services to do the following thing? Yes, we can reconstruct the terrain. This is very rough beta version or alpha version of our software. We can reconstruct the terrain and then we can patch it, basically subdivide it, and then classify each of the parts and say, okay, the blue part in the middle is water bodies, basically river. Then you can see that you have wetlands, forest, and semi-natural areas, artificial surfaces, agricultural areas. So you can do it on a much larger scale by combining 2 softwares. Also, you find some very interesting things like most common type of surface is cloud. Cloud is not a type of surface, but when you're a satellite or high flying airplane, it is kind of a surface. So, intact.
Well, I'm among those who have already heard this presentation, so, but it's already. But,
So you
but
don't
it's
have any
always,
questions?
No, I don't have any questions, but I'm quite sure that there are people in this room or maybe online who do have some question or comment.
Oh,
One, go with what? Just use the mic.
Congratulations. This was a presentation where I kind of felt I understood better what EOS is. I usually call it a rabbit hole.
and you're an Alice.
So I'm trying to understand what it is, and then I get diverted to trying to understand what EOS future is, and trying to understand what the tripartite governance is, and trying to understand, and then get.
I feel your pain. Because most of the brochures and the marketing material unnecessarily promotes governing structure, because it's important for funding bodies to know how stuff works.
Congratulations again. I think this was a very, very to the point promotional activity. Nevertheless, in this, apart from the governance rabbit hole, I also have difficulties to get to the service rabbit hole. Like, how would you recommend a researcher who has some data and thinks there must be some people who have visualized that, and I would like to have a visualization. Is there some service?
Yes, in EOSC or in IFOS? Basically.
Exactly, and I don't care about which label it has.
Excellent. Yes, in NIFOS, there is NIFOS catalog, which you can go to nifos.eu, click on catalog and browse the catalog of all the services which are on board. EOSC has a larger, but it's called portfolio or hub or whatever. They change the name for no reason every 2 years, basically new project, new name, but it's the same thing. You can go there and browse, and currently in NIFOS, we are all very open access and no reimbursement. But in EOSC, you can also find open commercial, let's say, services and open free services that do basically what you need, probably. I don't know what your field is.
Social science.
Social sciences, and you're visualizing, I don't know, geographical
And
data.
mapping data.
Sorry?
Mapping data.
Mapping data.
Like,
Yes.
okay, there are these 100 organizations and they do these things and they're related to the, it should be easy.
Yeah.
And still we're working on Excel.
Yes. Okay, much better than working in Word or PowerPoint, because I have seen research data in PowerPoint presentations and it's fantastic. It's something to behold. Basically, we do have something like this on our site. If you go to NIFOS, you will see that we have a landscaping survey, which we did, and we are using, again, open source toolboxes to map and visualize the data. And you can absolutely contact basically any mail for contact in NIFOS, because if you write to a wrong address, somebody will forward you basically to the right person. And that's maybe the most important part of these projects. It's not the technology, it's the people. And the people know people. And if you need something that I cannot provide, but I know that Angela can, and Angela basically, she can provide. She's the supplier to deal with. Yeah. So I just forward everything to Angela. So no, not a problem for me. So that's it. I think. Feel free. Thank you.
Nothing from the
Excellent.
audience online. Yeah, but just a quick, and then we.
We see a lot of tools and services. Do you have any kind of statistics how much of this is used by researchers, in particular from our country? Whether they know where to find things and how to use them?
That sounds like a great idea for a research paper, and a very useful research paper, because most of the projects are a limited time frame and they will collect data during the duration of the project, but long-term usage is something that is really interesting. I know for my area, but not for general researchers. Cool.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. So let me see, there's we do have an additional question from Mitti from Kosovo, who asks, what are the actual resources you get to do open science, or do we expect to have resources in the years ahead? Oh, that's a tough one. Anyone to add, maybe Mihailo, and then we switch to the next presentation.
Okay, so
yeah.
For example, in NIFOS, we just concluded 2 months ago, we concluded open call in which we dedicated a large part of resources to new research, which is not already covered by project. So apart from being a part of existing or new funding project from EU or whoever, such projects usually have open calls, and you should probably get in touch with whoever is representative in your country, region, or whatever, in your field of studies, and see if there are any open calls, because a lot of institutions and projects from time to time have open calls where they explicitly say, we will give 600 CPUs, or I don't know, 2 million CPU hours, 10 terabytes, blah, 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 for storage, for compute, for this, for this, for this. And basically you're late for our open call, but you have to stay on top of this. Like people who are job hunting are always on LinkedIn. You should probably browse ELSC page more frequently. So.
Good. Great, thanks a lot. So I will now stop sharing the screen because the next presentation will come from the online presenter. It's our Snežana Smederevac, who is also part of our project, and she comes from the Faculty of Philosophy of the University of Novi Sad. Okay, perfect, Snežana. Can you just do the full screen? So she will present open access and open science legislatives and repositories. So Snežana, feel free. We can hear you.
Thank you, Angela. It's hard to continue after such an interesting presentation and speaker. I come from Novi Sad, from the University of Novi Sad, and I am coordinator of the STAR Center of Excellence for behavioral research in psychology, which is dedicated to open science and open access and generally responsible research and innovation. I'm very sorry that I'm not in Banja Luka today, and believe that this event will contribute to the further development of open access and open science in Western Balkan countries and in general. I will present today the results of the survey that was conducted during the spring of this year. Actually, we plan we have the plan to create this list of policies and repositories next year, but we started this year, and this report is a starting point for more comprehensive results and list which we will finish, I hope, this next year. We wanted to investigate open science practice and attitudes of decision makers and the research community towards open science in Western Balkan countries. And we believe that policies and available infrastructure is illustration of this situation in the field regarding open science, and both policies and the available infrastructure can boost raising awareness of importance of this topic for science and generally research process and research results. So we wanted to provide a comprehensive overview of the existing strategies, recommendations, policies, and the technical infrastructure aiming to fostering open science and open access in Western Balkan countries. This comprehensive analysis is very important for future, for further boosting this process in our countries. In the broadest sense, we classified the policies as national, funding, and institutional. And this classification is not explicit, as sometimes funding policies can be used as national, etc. So documents that are considered as policies can be different, such as laws, strategies, or guidelines, everything can which regulate this this aspect of research. The infrastructure generally refers to the repositories for depositing the results of scientific research in open access with appropriate Creative Commons license. So it was our goal. Invitation to participate in the survey was sent to all universities and research institutes in Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, North Macedonia, and Serbia. It is estimated that the questionnaire was directly addressed to some 15 institutions. The questionnaire I hope you can see this in presentation. The questionnaire used in the survey was custom made to cover all relevant issues related to open access and open science. The first part aimed to identify relevant policies and documents, and responsible persons needed to provide a link for the full document. The second part was related to existing open science practice, technical resources, and information infrastructure. And third part related to attitudes towards open science among decision makers, and includes questions such as how do research at your institution pay for APC, for example, or if your institution does don't have repository, do you think there is need to develop it, etc. Current report presents the results as first July this year, but this questionnaire is still available for all interested stakeholders at our website. So I will present the results for each country separately, and we will go alphabetically. First in line is Albania. As far as we know, based on this survey, currently there is no national initiative, open science or open access initiative in Albania. Although, as we know, as far as we know, researchers from scientific institutions are making progress towards open access and open science policies. Also, open access policy document is required as part of research grants from public funds, while data management plan are parts of specific projects. In Albania, researchers rely on institutional open science repositories such as Zenodo, and the public repository exists within the non-profit organization CoPlan. As we can see, responsible persons for maintenance of the repository, this repository, are from IT sector and from research community by institutional resources. And we can see that APC costs for publishing in open access journals are mostly paid by project funds. However, researchers must also rely on both their own and institutional resources. And I think it's very important information. Now, we will see the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Currently, there is no open access or open science national or institutional policies in Bosnia and Herzegovina. However, the data archive for social sciences adopted a policy, open science policy, and this policy and repository were developed within Center for Development Evaluation and Social Science Research, and I hope that we will enjoy in next presentation where this center will presented, and I hope that we will see their practice. However, some higher education institutions have developed repositories to help researchers to make the results of scientific work more visible. The University of Banja Luka, University of Zenica, and of course that Data Archive for Social Sciences. I classified that repository as thematic since it relates to social sciences. The maintenance of repositories dedicated to IT sector, librarians, and researchers, which is in charge for this job. And they maintain digital repository within the support of the Ministry of Science and of course with their own funds. It's also very important information, every information where government and relevant institutions help researchers to develop policies, and infrastructure is very important for the development of open science initiatives. We can see that APC costs for publishing in open access journals are mostly paid by project funds and by the researchers' own resources. Occasionally, research institutions also support researchers in this process. It's interesting that attitudes that APC should not be paid illustrates perhaps the fact that if there is systematic solution for green or gold open access, researchers can avoid additional cost of publishing. Next is Montenegro. We can see that Ministry of Education of Montenegro has adopted national policy in 2020, I think. University of Montenegro has the practice of depositing results in their institutional repository. But since only one state institution participated in the survey, there are no data on how the repository is financed and maintained, or what resources researchers rely on to pay the APC. Next is North Macedonia. National Open Science Cloud Initiative has adopted national policy. This policy, I realized that it is in form of declaration. All researchers and stakeholders are free to sign this declaration, relying on the EOS and existing, of course, thematic repositories. But only faculty of engineering within their state university has the institutional repository. Sorry. Research institutions do not allocate funds for open science resources. The repository is maintained by researchers, and so far there is no support from the IT sector or librarians for their maintenance. However, it seems that researchers have substantial support from institutions for APC charges. It's really good to know, and it's good for their researchers. In Serbia, the Ministry of Education, Science and Technological Development adopted National Open Science Platform in 2018. It was a result of Be Open project, which brings together all state universities and Ministry of Education, and this policy adopted within this project, and almost all higher education and research institutes and institutions adopted institutional open science policies in following years. And University of Novi Sad adopted policy regarding open data, namely all PhD candidates need to provide data management plan within their PhD, finished PhD thesis, of course, if they conducted empirical research. Also, Science Fund of Republic of Serbia has regulated open access publishing and open data treatment in accordance with FAIR principles and for all projects applying for research grants. Regarding infrastructure, at national level, there is NARDUS, this National Repository of PhD Theses, and many research institutions have developed digital repositories. However, except in the case of the University of Belgrade and research institutes in Belgrade, these repositories are not maintained and many are not functional. The repositories are mainly maintained by librarians and the IT sector, which illustrates the importance of their role in supporting science and research. For example, NARDUS, National Repository of PhD Thesis, is maintained exclusively by librarians according to an established protocol. However, there is still no regulated system for our repositories in different institutions, so progress depends solely on the willingness of institutions to focus on this topic. Repositories are also maintained mostly with the funds of institutions and therefore depend directly on their income or projects for which they received grants. On the other hand, researchers mainly use project grants or their own resources to pay APCs, which is also a consequence of the lack of institutional support for open science practice. In conclusion, the landscape of open access and open science policies and resources in Western Balkan is diverse, and it will be possible to apply single model in all countries and institutions. Although national policy, I have to say that this can be a problem. Although national policy should provide a flexible framework for defining policies at lower levels and a solution for infrastructure, existing policies only declaratively regulate open science, respecting their importance without an action plan for infrastructure and maintenance. And open science policies and all resources are often determined by available resources and local context. For example, although national policies have been adopted in Montenegro and North Macedonia, resources for their implementation are not available to researchers. Or researchers in Albania rely on solely on international policies and repositories such as Zenodo, without regulating this topic at national or institutional level. But they can rely only on international funded projects. Or although there are no national policies in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we have a great example of a center Center for Social Sciences. I have forgotten that full name, which illustrate the response of researchers to the challenges of open science and illustrate the bottom-up approach in solving these problems. or finally, Serbia is among the leading countries in terms of adopted policies, and the importance of open science is recognized in our law of science, on science and national policy, research fund, and all higher education institutions. However, none of these policies provide a solution for the resources needed to implement open science principles. Therefore, functional repositories exist only within University of Belgrade and research institutes in Belgrade, which rely on their own resources or project grants. So although other universities have repositories, their maintenance is not ensured, which reduce the enthusiasm of researchers for their use. Overall, the Western Balkan countries generally have developed policies, open science policies, except for, I think, Albania and Bosnia and Herzegovina. However, these policies do not define the resources that institutions and researchers will rely on to adhere to new research practice. Also, with the rise of internationally coordinated infrastructures such as ELST, these policies perhaps need to meet some new requirements, and perhaps it will be necessary to revise all these policies in following years. And in general, research institutions developed open science repositories mainly through internationally funded projects, leading to a lack of their sustainability. In other words, open access is implemented through a bottom-up approach, which depends on the enthusiasm of participants in research process, such as researchers or librarians. I have to say that the systematic approach to addressing all open science challenges, therefore, needs to be developed involving all stakeholders, and decision makers should be better informed about internationally accepted standards and requirements, while researchers should be introduced to these new research practices. At the end, I hope that the creation of the comprehensive list of policies and repositories for all Western Balkan countries will further improve the process of research practice related to open science. Thank you for your attention. You need, I think that.
Since we already have one question from the audience, I will just read it out loud. It comes from Eugenia from ESF, saying, do you know if any of the countries you studied has policies for including open science training in higher education or academic curricula?
I don't know that such thing exists. I tomorrow have a presentation in our Academy of Science and Arts regarding open science, and I will mention this topic regarding open data. So since we have only one manual for open science published by our team and team from Be Open project, and this manual can be useful for our researchers when they want to create a data management plan or something regarding open access procedures or citizen science projects, etc. But there is no systematic solution for curricula, and I think it's a very important question.
Thank you. So another question from North Macedonia. from Vera Dimitrievska from FIT. Regarding the APC in North Macedonia, can you clarify more about what the data says for North Macedonia?
I think that we can back and see. We can back and see. Just a moment. Where is North Macedonia? APC. So, just a moment. I have to stop this since I don't know what happened. You can see data which we received from this survey. APC are financed from projects, from the funds of their institutions. I don't know which institutions, since this is answer of responsible persons from these institutions from North Macedonia, and from their own resources. And I think that this is not sustainable solution, since researchers don't have resources for finance this aspect of open science.
Okay, great, thank you.
Even projects don't have resources for finance publishing in open access exclusively through APC. I think that there is a lot of projects that don't have enough resources for this aspect of research, which is very important, but this is the reason for existing the green open access and developing repositories, which is a very important resources for free open access approach.
Great, thank you. So if we don't have any urgent questions from the audience here, I would like to thank Snežana for her excellent presentation, giving us an overview and also a great intro into the next session and presentation, open science and open access in practice. So we know what there is in terms of the legislation and policies, but how it looks in practice from the perspective of Data Archive for Social Sciences in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Amela Kurta from Center for
Development, Evaluation
Development.
and Social Science Research. A long name, but I think
Yes.
I will explain why it is like that.
Okay, let me
Okay.
just find your
Presentation.
presentation. And
While
then-
we are trying to find presentation, and since we are, I think, ahead of agenda, I will start. So my name is Amela Kurta, and I'm coming from the Data Archive for Social Sciences in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is managed by the Center for Development, Evaluation and Social Science Research. Thank you, Snežana, for giving us an example of the open science and practice that we are trying to establish and promote in our country, but also regionally. We are, as a center, non-profit organization, and the whole process of the establishment of a center and a data archive is self-funded by our own funds. And actually what Snežana pointed out, that many of the open science policies didn't cover parts related to the financing of the open science practices. So that is the situation here in our country, but I think the same is in the region. And also thank you for giving us as an example of a good practice. We are trying to make it even better. You will see. So 3 years, so a little bit back in time, what actually motivate us to establish the center, but also to try to make it
open research infrastructure and establish data archive within the center. As Mr. Savic said, we should be good enough to be in EU, but I think that we are better in making excuses why we are not good enough here in Balkans. Some of these are in social sciences. For example, data are not available. Conducting such a research is too expensive because we don't have specific tools to do the data analysis here in the country or regionally, or we don't have specific research skills. Somebody there in Western Europe is better in doing this. We are not clever enough. And then we realized that we need a research infrastructure. We did a little survey because I'm wearing two hats. One is researchers, the second one is coordinator of the data archive. And I wanted to know what are the practices of our researchers in sharing the data and keeping the data and giving the data to the community. And our survey that we conducted in 2019 actually showed that researchers mainly kept the data by themselves on the laptops, USB sticks, and things like that. And it is a huge loss of data, efforts, resources, money that was spent to collect data, and nobody else except that particular researchers cannot use it again. So the research infrastructure in social sciences was needed. We established data archive within our center with the mission and with the one sentence that lead us, and that is the golden rule of any research: don't collect primary data if secondary data are already available and can serve the purpose. But you have to know which data you can trust, and you have to know what is to have a high quality data to conduct such a research. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. If somebody already do part of the job, why not reuse it and add our own value on that by doing additional research or explaining results in different way. So the premise from the very beginning was that the research can be done less costly with better quality. What is common in natural sciences to share data and to coordinate how to say differently in a community is not common in social sciences. We are still struggling with sharing the data. So at least here in our country, and probably it is the same in other in the Western Balkan region. So okay, the bottom-up approach, as Snežana said, we decided to establish the data archive, a place where you can give your data to be kept in a secure environment, and also to provide data to the researchers for reuse. We are national service, so and our role is to ensure long-term preservation and dissemination of social science data. Currently, we have over 50 data sets available for use under two types of access. One is open access, totally open access, where you can go to the data catalog and download your data. And the second one is restricted access, where you only have one additional step is to ask for the data and to explain the purpose, and you will get the access to the data. We provide data under the FAIR principles. You probably know what they are. And as a national service, we are partner of the consortium of European Social Science Data Archives, which is an ERIC. We are not currently full member of this ERIC. We are awaiting for the decision of our Ministry of Civil Affairs for Bosnia and Herzegovina to become full member. And all of these initiatives, and I'm asking also you as a research community to push our decision makers to to go with others in the region and others in the research community to become more integrated in this way. So what I wanted also to point out here is that 3 years ago, we didn't have any kind of data archive and a digital repository for social sciences in our country. Now we have one, and I think a good one, since we managed to get CTS as a core trust seal certificate, which is a global standard in procedures and policies regarding the long-term preservation and digital repository services. And we are only one in the Western Balkan region. What? The only one now, or?
No. Son in Serbia.
Yes.
Academy. The VAIS.SAMU.whatever is their full call. I mean, they are part of our project, but I know we have a new site when it was new in January.
Okay, thank you for that. Are they in the social sciences as well, or some other type of digital repository?
But they are core trust seal.
Okay.
Because they gave us a presentation about the process of obtaining.
Yeah. So thank you very much for that information. I really didn't know for that, but as far as I know from the repositories in social sciences, we are the only, because we are thematic repository, not the general one. But also it is good to know that we have in the region at least one additional repository that is certified with the CTS. Our mission and our services can be seen in this slide. I will not go throughout each of them. I will just say that we are mediating between the depositors and the users by providing different services to them in terms of the entire workflow that is going from the data deposit to the users. The entire workflow is defined under the set of policies and procedures. So we have established, in addition to the policy for the open access research infrastructures that Snezana mentioned, that was developed thanks to the RCC support program. That is at the level of an institution, at the level of CREDI. We also have a set of policies and procedures at the level of the data archive, which defines our work and defines how we communicate with our research community. And there you will have, there you can find steps how to access the data and how to deposit the data, but I will shortly said what are the steps. Okay. Also in our work and in our daily activities, we have to say that, okay, we have the data archive. We collected the data sets so far, over 50 so far. We provide different services. We are trying to educate researchers and educate our community to deposit the data and to reuse the data. But still, the demand is low. And I'm asking why. Why you, that is my question, but also a question for you and a question for discussion. Why we have still in our universities mentors that said you have to collect primary data. Even if you know that there are secondary data that you can reuse, that they are checked, that they are verified, and that you can trust them, and they are secured in a trustworthy digital repository. That is my question, and a question for you as well to think about, because from the part as a researcher, what is the benefit for you to deposit the data? You can get research validation because others can use your data and reproduce your results and prove that your research is good. Also, you can get citation because the data as well as the publications can be cited. No data lost because even your laptop can broke, you can lose your USB and things like that. You have a secure place where data are stored. And actually, it removes a user burden from you as a researcher because you don't have to deal with every single time a person asks to access the data, we do it for you. And also, we are motivating new researchers because a second researcher can add on your results. How to deposit the data in our archive, just please contact us and we will give you clear instructions how to deposit the data. You can find them on our website in all of these policies and procedures, and it is quite easy. You contact us, write a short proposal why you think we should keep your data for the long term. What are the benefits of the research community to use your data, and other steps will be quite easy. Why reuse? From the perspective of the researchers, to reduce efforts in the primary data collection, to save resources, to fulfill sometimes grant obligations, and to have data that you can trust, because secondary data that you can trust because they are checked within our procedure. How to use them? Please access data catalog, filter, and find whatever you need, and you will have a clear instructions how to access the data. I said we have 2 categories. You can either download directly or you can ask for the data. And in addition to that, we can provide you with other tools, such as, for example, pre-written syntaxes that can be used for you to analyze the data in addition to the data sets. The entire process is it goes under the legal and ethical procedures that we follow that are listed here. And we, as an archive, are working following the Open Archival Information System reference model with the pre-ingest phase, which means that we are actively engaged with our community and we're trying to educate our research community to deposit the data, reuse the data, and also our entire process archive is a service that is embedded in our research infrastructure at CREDI. And I will just say that it is our internal repository in terms that all research that we are conducting, the data are kept in the repository. And we are also providing these data to other researchers. And we are trying to raise awareness and also trying to increase the number of reuse of a single data set. And how we are doing this by running an Inquire Evidence to Policy Hub, which is our training support program for the postgraduate students. We are doing this together with our partner universities, 13 of them. One of them is University of Banja Luka. And I will just wanted to say that our new call will be published soon, so stay tuned. This year, probably it is going to be with a prize for the students to reuse the data, and we're trying to give incentive for young early career researchers to do open to be open science practitioner. Okay, and at the end, just to conclude, I will, the why open science at the end, why to use and reuse the resources that somebody already developed, is that we can have better quality research with lower costs. Because if we have already something what others developed and we give this, it doesn't have to be public, but it has to be open. So people have to know where to find something and how to use it. And at the end, our archive can be found on the retrieve data and fair sharing platforms. And also, please reach out whoever have the data that want to be deposited or to want to be used. And I just wanted to repeat my question. What do you think? What is the reason why there is still low demand for this kind of services in our country? And that was actually one of my questions that I asked Mr. Savic is there any kind of user statistics? How many of these tools are used by our researchers? Okay, they are there. We made an effort to say that they are there, but how many of these are actually used by our researchers? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amela. So there was a question towards the audience. Anyone to respond? Dragana, can you please just use the mic?
I want to put actually three questions, three reader questions. First of all, hello, hi, I want to ask you first, according to REST3 data, you are almost fully trusted repository. Just one aspect is missed. I mean, and this is very interesting. Why don't you use, or do you plan to use persistent identifiers in further? And sorry. And second is which licensing do you use for reuse? Because in certain cases, CC0 is forbidden actually in other countries. So about it. And also, what is very important, I mean, we have to know that this is a globally oriented project. So how many data sets are, let's say, archived by abroad region researchers? Thank you.
So for the president identifiers, we are currently in the process of establishing data versions of catalog, which will enable better user interface and services for finding, depositing, and reusing the data. We got our Banja user, how it is said, identifiers. Thank you. Identifiers. So we are now in the process of giving the identifiers to our data set that we already collected, and we have a space for the new ones for this year. And it will be, I think, by the end of the year, each of our data sets will have present identifiers. The second question related to the licenses. On that platform, you can set the access rights and categories and also the licenses. Currently, most of our data sets are in the restricted access category. So the person has to say, I need the data for the research purposes and explain within the project or within the individual research why he or she needs the data. And then it goes to the approval process and we get the data to the user. For others that are available online for the downloads, for the open access part, those are the data that are primarily collected that are not primarily collected data by the individual researchers, rather than by the institutions that give the data to our platform to users. And third question, we have submissions of the data from the researchers abroad, but our archival acquisition policy is that the data should be about either citizens of the Bosnia and Herzegovina or are factoring the research for the policy relevant research for Bosnia and Herzegovina, because we are national service.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Amila. And there is one more question from the audience.
Not actually questions, but I would like to highly commend this effort as someone from the field of social sciences and as a keen user of open data. Now, being from Serbia, I don't know the situation in Bosnia, but I could say that people in Serbia are not exactly aware of the benefits of open data. However, in social sciences, at the time when research integration, meta-analysis, etc., is being implemented, I think that repositories such as this one can be highly beneficial because there is a high demand for secondary data from a bunch of researchers worldwide. So if you have the data can be used, then it will be found. So it's great. And our strategy to raise awareness of open data was to include it in our curricula, to ask from our students to use it, to find it, to use it, provide the links to some larger repositories, and then just like students choose the topic that they will write their empirical papers on. And also, what could be a way to facilitate the approach to the repository would be perhaps to connect to some user-friendly statistical software such as JASP, such as Gemoly, because to my knowledge, the way JASP is connected to open science framework databases, I guess that having cloud service now, Gemoly or even JASP could connect to any repository. I think that it would be just required to make some sort of contract with them or to contact them. So that would be much user-friendlier than using syntaxes, at least from my own experience, where I see the syntax never goes back. So it's a bit painful at the beginning. So my comments once again.
Thank you. Okay, that is probably good. From Coalition S, who will moderate this entire session before the lunch. So, Johan, the floor is yours.
Okay, I hope you're not too hungry yet. So I will give you a presentation about Coalition S and Plan S. We've talked a lot this morning, I think, about open science and open data and about ways of making that available. And in fact, of course, one of the things that's needed is mandates. We didn't talk that much about open access, and and we didn't talk very much about mandates, but that's what I'm going to talk about. So mandates for open access and how to put those into practice. And then Miro is going to talk a little bit about his experience or their experience as a member of Coalition S, on how this works. So what do we do? What is it that we do? Because I believe very strongly that, I mean, in order to get to these open data, the way people get to open data is through articles. Articles, peer-reviewed articles are really portals to data, because usually, in an article, there's a reference to the data, then you go look at the data, and then that makes you think. So that is also one of the reasons that Coalition has put so much emphasis on open access to research results, because peer-reviewed articles are sort of the primary results, and then you get beyond to the data that you then can share, reuse, and so on and so forth. So that's one of the things that I wanted to say before, as a kind of an introduction to as a link to what was said this morning. So now it doesn't work anymore. What did I do wrong? Now it is. Okay. Yes. So Coalition S is now an association, actually, an alliance of 28 organizations worldwide, many national funders. Australia, an important funder in Australia, just joined us this week. But various European national funders, from Austria to the UK, The European Commission with Horizon Europe is part of Coalition S and Plan S. Charitable foundations, like important ones like the Wellcome Trust, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and then also the World Health Organization, Jordan, Zambia, South Africa. And in all, we invest, the organizations involved in Coalition S and Plan S invest about 35 billion euros in research with an output of about 150,000 peer-reviewed publications. So that's important to know, to sort of see the heft of what we do, right? I mean, that's the so what is the deal with Plan S? What does it do? Well, it says basically one thing. There is basically one goal, namely funded researchers who receive funds from Coalition S, so also from Horizon Europe, must make sure that all of their publications are available, not published, but available in open access at the moment of publication. That's it. It's that simple. And we don't care how you do it, but you have to do it. That's called a mandate. The same with data, actually. You could do that with data, and I think it's important to do that with data. As a university, you should make it a mandate. Just tell your researchers, this is how you do it. And otherwise you don't get, you know, an ethics consent, you don't get consent to even do your research. So very important. Mandates are important. Researchers don't like it because researchers like to do whatever they want, right? I mean, we know this. But it's what is worse, right? I mean, what's much worse is that researchers, you know, dies in a car crash somewhere, and then the data get dispersed because they are on the laptop of that researcher, and their family throws the laptop away. I mean, I'm not talking about a hypothetical scenario. This happens all the time. You will confirm this, right? Like all the time. There are many cases. So mandates are a way for universities, for funders to preserve research. Preserve research for the future. This is also something that you said very eloquently, I believe. So we want funded researchers to make sure that all peer-reviewed papers are available in open access, and researchers must retain their intellectual rights. So that's very important. They must retain their intellectual rights, and they do that via a CC BY license. CC BY license is the most open license. It's also the license that is most in line with academic tradition. So basically, as an author, you give everyone else the possibility to reuse your research freely as long as you are cited. I think that's a fair deal, right? I mean, but you yourself as a researcher with CC BY retain intellectual rights. What does that mean? It means that you have the right to reuse parts of your research. So, you know, the pictures, the data, the graphs, everything that you have used in that paper as you wish. You don't have to ask anyone for permission. While if you transfer copyright to the publisher, you always have to ask for permission. This is something. So CC BY is important. Use it from today. You know, everybody, I really insist, everybody should use this, because you can also use CC BY if you're not part of Coalition S or if you're not part of Plan S. It's a way for you to preserve sufficient intellectual rights on your own work. I mean, what could be more important than to, you know, and this is also something that we insist on, because we believe that open access starts with not giving away your rights. I mean, you know, if you have your rights to your research, you can decide to keep rights on it, but also to share it with others, right? If there is a mandate to share it with others, then you will share it with others much more easily. Okay, so that's the idea. The idea is basically everything that we fund, those 150,000 articles, all have to be available open access at the moment of publication. Now, this idea is also, I mean, this idea is not crazy since that, I mean, we've been working on this since 2018, has been confirmed by the White House OSTP, Open Office of Science and Technology Policy, in their latest memo, the big memo of 25 August 22, which basically recommends that all American agencies, that's 400 agencies representing $150 billion in research, have to make their research open access as of 2025. So that's a big deal. I mean, if the Americans come on board, it's not just, you know, a few European funders that have gotten crazy about open access. This means that the world is changing. This becomes a global effort. And this is where we are now. And it's very clear that this echoes the Plan S goal, namely everything has to be available, open access, from the moment of publication, and they insist on data as well. So that's very important as well. I mean, so they have a broader scope than we do, but the principle is the same. So the agencies have to figure out how they're going to do this, right? And since we as coalitionists have a little bit of an advance there, I truly hope that we can collaborate in setting those policies in the same way. Because of course, if you have a one single goal like that, it's easy to say, but it's easier said than done, right? So how do you do this? You do this by setting out a number of interlocking policies at all levels of open access. So Plan S itself is not a policy. I mean, it's a set of principles. And it's a set of principles that says, look, I mean, you know, this is the minimum thing that you want to, that we want to people to conform to. So one minimum thing is principle 1, all articles have to be in CC BY, period. We don't care how you do it, but that's the way it's done. And then why do we want open access? Well, I think that's also clear for society, because open access makes research available faster, so others can build on it. For researchers, it's important because many studies have demonstrated that articles in open access are much more visible and much more cited. So, you know, if you are a researcher, you want to publish in open access because it's in your own interest, right? You are cited much more than when an article is behind the paywall. So that's the reason to do it. And also for changing how research is done. We also discussed this morning. I think articles are portals to open data, protocols and code, and it affords more collaboration, less competition. This is the kind of science that we want. That is more collaboration, not everybody having their own data on their little laptop and on the floppy disks, maybe, you know, but having it on repositories I mean, I'm preaching the converted, I know, but having it available for all society, for everybody to have access to it, and we use it as they see fit. Okay, so how do we do this? Well, we have 3 routes to what we call compliance. So 3 routes to achieve open access. The first route is publication in full open access journals. Most of our funders support this, but this is not an absolute necessity to be a member of Plan S, to be able to pay your researchers to publish in open access. And we heard this morning that it's not even necessary for a funder or for a country to do that, because very often funding is sufficient to pay for these open access fees, right? So that is fine. But I think route 2 is especially important for countries like yours, namely the publication in subscription journals and what we call the rights retention strategy. So we allow for publication in all journals, especially also subscription journals, if the author deposits a copy of the author accepted version in a repository. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, because that's what I call the complicated road. I mean, it's always the same, right? I mean, if you pay, it's the easy road. It's easy to pay, and that's always easy. If you do the green road, it's a little bit more complicated, but it's possible and it's worth the fight, I would say. And then route 3 is publication in journals that are under transformative arrangement. I think Miro will talk a little bit about that. Transformative arrangements are arrangements with the publisher where, in fact, the publisher agrees to not only publish, not only give readers access to reading, but also access to publication in open access. So basically, it's an agreement that universities, most often universities, sometimes ministries, conclude with the publishers to say, look, in our country, all researchers who publish within your journals publish there in open access, in addition to having access to reading. That's a transformative arrangement. And of course, that's something that we don't want to stand in the way of, because it's a powerful mechanism for countries, regions to move to open access. It's also not exactly an inexpensive way of doing things, as Miro will explain. It's not inexpensive, but it's feasible. But I think especially route 2 is an important way forward. Now, I don't think you can see this very well. I'm sorry. But in order to help researchers navigate all of these three routes, we have made a journal checker tool, basically a search engine that allows researchers to see how their favorite journal allows for publication in open access. So basically you fill in 3 fields: what your journal is, what your funder is, and what your university is, and that combination of information tells you whether the journal is a gold open access journal where you have to pay, whether it's a subscription journal and you have to deposit things in a repository, or whether that, and that's why we need the information about the university, whether that journal falls under a transformative arrangement. You don't have to pay anything because your library has taken care of it, right? Because as a researcher, of course, you don't know how the journals that you want to publish in correspond to Coalition S policy. So that's why we built this tool. And that tool is very useful for our researchers. I mean, thousands of researchers have already used it. So we can see that this is a useful tool to help our researchers publish in open access. So that's one of the things that we built. So transformative arrangements, I already talked to them. There's various types of this, but I won't insist on this. Transition occurs at the level of library consortia. So this is not something that the funders, we as funders, can do something about. Some funders, about 7 of our funders are involved in this, like Slovenia is, for instance, Portugal as well, UKRI, and they indeed help negotiate these deals. And some funders, so like I said, some funders contribute to these initiatives, and these transformative arrangements have been very powerful in contributing to the transition. This gives you an idea from, 2015 to 2021, how the amount of articles in open access has increased as a result of these transformative arrangements. So things go relatively fast in that domain. Now a little bit about this route 2, the rights retention strategy. As you know, there are still a lot of subscription journals out there that are not transitioning to open access or to full open access. And there we ask our authors to deposit a copy of the author accepted manuscript of the paper in a repository immediately on publication. We know that, of course, authors often sign copyright transfer agreements that prevent this depositing the copy immediately. And that's why we developed the rights retention strategy, in order to sort of prevent this copyright transfer agreement. So we require our grantees to apply a prior CC BY license to the AAM. So when you submit a paper to a journal, you say, I, the author, apply a CC BY license to the future author accepted manuscript that results from this submission. So you make a claim on the final version of the article. If you do that, your CC BY is prior to any copyright transfer agreement that the publisher may ask you to sign, and takes legal precedence. I mean, we've tested this. This is safe. This is true in almost all jurisdictions. The publishers don't like it, but we don't care. And by asserting that CC BY license, you retain sufficient rights to do this, and a CC BY license is prior, so it takes legal precedence. So this is really based on Plan S Principle 1. It is really also something that I need to repeat very often, because many researchers don't quite realize that they have the original copyright on their papers, and that the original copyright holder decides how to license their work. You know, you as the author are the creator of the work, so you have original copyright. So don't give it away. You know, the first thing is never give it away. Yeah. So that's why we insist so much on the CC BY license, and that you should always use it. Yeah. Based on a simple principle, intellectual creation is the property of the owner. You simply have to assert ownership by asserting the CC BY license. We believe that delivering publication services is something that should be paid for. That's not the issue. We are willing to pay for it, but we are willing to pay for the version of record. The author accepted manuscript, we believe, which is virtually the same as the version of record, is the author's, and that version can then be deposited in a repository. If you don't have a national repository, don't panic. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can deposit, for instance, in the French repository. How? I mean, or how is open to, I mean, I didn't know this myself until a few months ago, but how is open to any researcher. You can also deposit on Zenodo, you can deposit wherever you want, as long as it's available. I mean, you know, countries don't have to have national repositories anymore. I mean, it's nice to have, of course, you know, it makes you feel proud as a country to have a national repository. I understand that. But, you know, it's not an absolute necessity to comply with that requirement that all of your papers are available in open access. So what do authors need to do? And I think, yes, what authors need, the only thing that authors need to do, and I insist on this, is it's not just for Coalitionist researcher. Any one of you who is not part of Coalitionist can do this for any article they submit tomorrow. Simply say, I apply a CC BY license to the AAM resulting from this submission, period. And the publisher will give you hell, but they have no right. All they can do is reject your paper from the start. That's the worst they can do to you. Okay, then you go somewhere else. But they won't, because I mean, we have very few cases where publishers actually reject that paper outright. We have actually 2 cases from the same family of journals in blood research. So, you know, and there's thousands and thousands of papers out there now that are already applying this. So it is a safe way to do this. So, you know, you put that phrase in. When the paper is accepted, you deposit the AAM in any repository of your choice. That is a safe, stable repository, and that's it. Your paper is in open access, and you publish in a subscription journal. The publishers don't have to like it, right? Of course, the publishers are making this difficult, so they will ask you to sign a separate contract. Don't do it. Because they can of course supplement the contract via contract law, making you, and then the new contract then of course contradicts the contract that you signed with your funder. So be careful about what you sign. But it's very strange. Researchers are very strange in this regard. I mean, when you buy a house, you read the contract, right? When authors sign a copyright transfer agreement, they never read the contract. They just sign. I mean, this is crazy. I mean, when you buy a car, you're more careful. But when you give away your own intellectual creation, then you just give it away as if it were worth nothing. No, we need to be more conscious about that. What we do is our own creation, and not only our own creation, but that we have to keep it in order to share it with the rest of the planet, so to speak, because the publishers are not sharing it. So publishers are making this difficult. We believe that publishers have the right to desk reject the articles, but as I said, they don't do this. They try to confuse, mislead, and trick authors to get out of their grant agreement. We've asked the publishers to cut it out, to stop with this, and they have, of course, predictably not replied. So this is very much a fight, right? This is very much a fight, and you may not want to be part of this fight. But if you don't want to be part of this fight, then of course you can also rest assured that you are actually a very good company in this fight, because I mean, you know, there's been the UNESCO declaration, the G6 declaration, the EUI Open Science Agenda, and the European Council stating very, very clearly that the retention of rights is a central point on the agenda, and that we should all do it, right? So, you know, we are backed up. Each individual here is really backed up by these policies. And even more importantly, I think, is that increasingly institutions are now adopting rights retention policies. So this is something that we've seen in Norway with Tromsø University, Arctic University of Norway, but also Birkbeck, the University of Cambridge University, University of Edinburgh. And, you know, if Cambridge does it, you know, I think anyone can do it. And the idea there is basically saying to the publishers, look, our researchers function under rights retention. If you, and this is very important, if you try to mislead them, or if you try to trick them into giving up their rights, you are procuring a breach of contract. So basically that means that, you know, you're trying to make the author break their contract, their employee contract with Cambridge University, in order to give away something that they cannot give away because they have a contract with Cambridge University. You see what I mean? So That's why rights retention policies by universities are much stronger, because of course, as funders, we only have a very tenuous relationship with the author. They have a contract for a few years, but of course, universities themselves are much more powerful in this regard. If all universities were to say, and again, this is something that you can do at University of Banja Luka, right? Rights retention policy. By just saying, look, all of our researchers from now on have it as a contractual obligation to put that phrase in their papers. And publishers, if you try to make it difficult for them by making them sign another contract, we can sue you. And we have it in good authority because we did a study on this with Ernst & Young. The university would win this hands down because you cannot procure a breach of contract, right? So that is why I think institutional rights retention policy, what I call RRP, are very powerful. They're more powerful than funder mandates because of this direct relationship between the university and the researcher. And of course, why should the university do this? Well, this is my last paragraph here. Well, it protects researcher against publishers. All these publishers that try to, publishers are powerful entities. A researcher is obviously intimidated by them. If the university backs them up by a rights retention policy in the university, protecting intellectual rights, the university not only backs up the researcher, but the university also protects the intellectual rights of all the papers in the university, and thereby protects the intellectual rights of the university as a whole about the production of the university, rather than giving it away to the publishers, right? So this is why this is also where I talk about this tort of procuring a breach of contract. Technical legalese, but it's good to know that if you do this, there's no way the publishers can take action against you individually as a researcher because the university is backing you up. I can talk about that later, also in the question period. We also have a number of other activities that we do. For instance, we think that all the fees of publication services have to be transparent. That's why we set up a journal comparison service that is going live now in the fall. We've asked publishers again to participate in this. We asked them to break down their prices, to give us an insight in their prices. As you know, for instance, a paper in Nature now costs 10,000 euros an APC. We want to know why it's that expensive. I think that's a reasonable ask, right? I mean, if you ask a painter to paint your house, you want to know what the price of the paint is, the number of hours, and so on. What you ask of a painter, you should be able to ask of a publishing company rather than just say, this is our global price. We are not going to give you insight. So we are asking for insight. And these insights then should give our libraries and funders insight in what the cost is of publishing, so that we know a little bit better what we are paying for. We also talk about Diamond Open Access. As you know, Diamond Open Access is a different kind of open access that doesn't ask for payment of fees. So Diamond Open Access is free to authors and readers. It's financed differently. It's financed via institutions, funders, other means, ministries sometimes. We have launched an action plan for Diamond Open Access to unify these journals across Europe. There's also a project that we just launched in Zadar, Croatia. In these past few days, it's a 3 million project that will bring this forward, that we will map the Diamond Open Access journals in Europe. Diamond Open Access is also publication that is done by the community, by researchers themselves, for researchers, by universities, by individuals, associations, societies. So this is something that we want to strengthen to provide an alternative to commercial publishing that we think is much too expensive. We also have a number of, we have made a statement about books. For books, we think that more time is needed. Statement on, we had the statement on academic books with 5 recommendations last year. We also think that books should be published in open access, but clearly there, since the market is a little bit different, you have lots of smaller publishers And those smaller publishers have not yet mentally adjusted their business models to open access. So we think that's going to take a little bit more time. We don't require CC BY there, but all CC licenses are allowed. So we are a little bit less strict, but the road of travel is clear. There also, within 5 to 10 years, we want to see full open access in books, because there's no reason why books should be different. And we are going to do this in close collaboration with the community for open access books. Finally, but this was already discussed, but I made this slide this morning because I was asked by Adam to say something about the other EC initiatives. This, of course, ties into EOSC. This also ties into Open Research Europe, which is a platform that affords post-publication peer review, which is a different type of publication. Of course, this is you publish first and you get reviews later, something that a lot of researchers are not yet acquainted with, but that is something that is going to become much more important in the future. Again, in the interest of open research, right? You publish first and the discussion around your article is public because all the reviews are public. Something that a lot of reviewers, that a lot of authors are still hesitant about, but that I think is the way of the future. And then there's also research assessment reform, an effort to change the way in which research is assessed, moving away from prestige factors. This is something that has now been signed by 350 organizations from 40 countries. It's something that the EC again has launched as an initiative. And the idea is basically, why would we as researchers only be valued for the number of grants that we get and the number of publications that we get in the highest impact journals? That's foolish. That's not a way to do research. We should reward people for being collaborative. We should reward people also for being reviewers, for being editors. I'm an editor myself. All right, for doing all the various tasks that make the research enterprise, right? I mean, of course, an article is sort of the apex of that, but there's many other things that go into the production of that article, and just the article should not be the only measure of success. So that's one of the things that this research assessment reform is going to do, and that of course echoes DORA and echoes also Principle 10 of Plan S, where we say as Plan S that we do not value during funding decisions things like impact factors, but that we look at the intrinsic value of work. We look at narrative CVs, we look at other kinds of intellectual impact that an author makes, rather than just the figures. The numbers and the figures are of much less interest to us now than the quality and proof of that quality, rather. And this is where I would like to stop, I believe, and maybe you have questions and discussion. So yes, but I wanted to insist especially about CC BY, because I do think that's an easy win. It's low-hanging fruit. Everybody can do it. Every university can do it. Every country can do it. But you just have to make the rules or want to make them. Yeah.
You're the moderator.
Yeah, I'm the moderator. So okay. Any questions? Sorry. Yeah. Was too difficult to push through? Yes. Yes. Yes, and we didn't want non-commercial either, because of course, I mean, what the funders said, you know, is well, but we don't care if a pharmaceutical company gets rich. I mean, we've done the research. If that research leads to better medicine, you know, and even if that costs money, we don't care. It's about bringing research forward. We wanted to keep things as simple as possible. Excuse me?
In the software world, it's equals BSD license, which is basically
yeah. But we do allow, I think, ND in specific cases when the author requests it. Yeah.
The research page is a platform for publication. Your research or what other channels do you have access?
We don't recognize ResearchGate as an official repository or as an appropriate repository, because it's not really open access. I mean, you have to become a member. It's not, you don't. So usually when we talk about repositories, we want to see national repositories that do not require you to log in any way, shape, or form, library repositories, national repositories, but not commercial repositories like ResearchGate. Also, ResearchGate is a commercial entity. It can be bought at any time. I mean, I myself, I don't trust any commercial entity in publishing anymore. It's, you know, because I mean, they will find a way to make money out of us. So, you know, I deeply believe in the power of the academic community to take care of academic publishing itself. But that's me. Yeah.
Can I just say, ResearchGate is not open access anymore.
Yeah, it's not open.
ResearchGate is only a platform to exchange articles, but it doesn't necessarily that those articles are licensed according to open
Exactly,
access.
and they're not necessarily licensed CC BY. Huh? It could be, you could put anything there, but it's not, and it's not easily accessible. It's not really open access, and the license is not guaranteed, which is the case in these national repositories. A repository like HAL, for instance, is really in France is really quite powerful in this regard, or Zenodo. But you know, you can use anything you want as long as you know you can get there in one click, so to speak. Yeah.
Just to see if I have understood this correctly.
Please do.
Because
Yeah, it's a lot of information, I know.
Couldn't be compared to the things in the state of affairs, the music industry, perhaps, because the published author manuscript could bear some analogies to the raw song material, right? So just to the music, and the rest there's some analogy to phonographic.
Yes, exactly. Yes, you could compare the AEM, for instance, to an MP4 file, right? Which is very imperfect. I mean, it's good enough, you know, to have on your iPhones, right? I mean, it's fine, but it's not the original recording with the full experience.
So this would mean that I, as a musician, hypothetical musician, could just make a cover version of my own stuff and put it anywhere.
Yes.
Despite of publisher's version already.
Yes, so the version of, I mean, we recognize the value of the version of record, and we also tell the publishers that we're willing to pay for that, because the version of record, of course, is the completely copy edited typeset version, and there's links in there, and there's beautiful images, and they use a beautiful font, you know. So it's really the whistles and bells. It's the whistles and bells version, right? And your own version, of course, is just the PDF that you sent in, the final PDF that you sent to the publisher, and the final Word document that they would typeset. So once the editor has said yes, this can be published, that is what you keep for yourself, because that's what you have a right to keep for yourself, because you have asserted your rights on it.
Many times, because I had an experience in quarreling or just negotiating with two publishers that have two versions of the questionnaire we made published. So one had to be cited in another and printed in another one, and that was struggle.
But exactly, but if you keep CC BY, they have nothing to say about it, you see. but indeed, if you have signed away your rights, if you signed away your copyright, then suddenly that thing becomes completely static and you cannot touch it anymore. I mean, what is crazy is that we allowed this for a quarter of a century. Any other questions? Especially about the rights retention study, because I know it's a lot of things to take in, but this is really something very powerful that we can all use. That's I'm a little bit on a mission. Go ahead.
I'm aware. Is there any university in the Western Balkans region that is willing to do the policy of rights retention policy?
No, that's why I'm here. So I'm really hoping that, you know, I really would like universities in Europe to adopt this. So Arctic University is adopting it. All the other Norwegian universities are considering it. They're thinking about it. Because this is something that you have to discuss, of course, in your community, right? You have to discuss it with the library, you have to discuss it with lawyers to see what the impact is. I'm willing to put you in contact with the people at Cambridge and the others, because there's now a little network of people who have worked on this and who have, you know, developed the exact right language to do this and to inform the publishers about it. So this is something that I would like to see adopted in all of the 800 universities that we have in Europe. But it's of course going slowly, which is normal, but it would be really nice to have a bridgehead in the Balkans somewhere. So who's going to be the first? Banja, Luka?
Is there any kind of support program as the RCC then?
I can, yeah, like I said, I can put you I can put you in contact with people who have done this and who can really easily help you. But it's really a matter also of getting your university community around it. So the librarians, leadership, right? The leadership of the university has, everybody has to believe that this is a good idea in order to protect the researchers and the research.
May I add something? But I will repeat this in presentation. But what is important to know is that membership in coalition does not mean any pressure to adopt all principles immediately. It is just a framework and it is a tool for funders and for universities. And you then after decide which applications will implement into your system, according to your circumstances, according to your, let's say, funds, etc., etc. But what is the most important? You will get fully support, and in the end, you will decide. I mean, your institution will decide.
Exactly.
This is very important because some of organizations think that, yeah, okay, I become a member of the coalition. Now I have to do immediately invest. I don't know how many millions in literature, etc., etc. No. First of all, a coalition is not only about transformative agreements. This is a huge part because it's a huge amount of money in game, but there are many other useful things which could be useful even if you don't have any, let's say, transformative agreements.
Yes.
For example, journal comparison
tool
center, then journal checker tool, etc., etc., or let's say those initiative coalition to set a common center for in the field of copyright. Right now, there are talks about how to deal with this question. Those solutions are absolutely useful for all research institutions.
Yes, we see this very much as a collaboration between funders and universities. So there are things that of course only funders can do, and there are things that only universities can do. For instance, transformative arrangements, that is something that only university libraries can do. We can do things like say to our researchers, you have to do this because, you know, it's our money. If you don't like our money, well, you know, don't take it. But if you take our money, then we ask you to publish in open access, period. It's that simple. So that's the power that funders have, that universities don't always have, right? It's but universities have then the power to institute rights retention measures, because it's a much more and it has many advantages, like I said. So that's why we're asking you to do that. Also, as a funder, for instance, and there's this misperception also of Coalition S. I want to still say that from the beginning that it was much more about gold open access and about paying the publishers. That's no longer the case. I mean, if funders want to join Coalition S by, for instance, just mandating green open access, saying, look, all our funds, all the authors that we fund, all the researchers that we fund must deposit a copy of their paper in a repository, green open access, then that's fine. That's fine, even if you don't provide funding for it. So we will be happy to have you, because we want to have a united front to move this forward and to change research towards to more openness. And that's why we think rights retention is so important, because that really requires the collaboration between funders and universities. I mean, it's true that we sort of, it was first developed at a university, it was first developed at Harvard. We took it further to adapt it to funders, and now it has to go back to the universities. So I would very much like to see, because I mean, what we see in the UK, for instance, the fact that Cambridge and that Edinburgh and Birkbeck adopted it is now an incentive for Oxford to adopt it, which is going to adopt it probably in October. And I know of at least 10 other universities that are considering it. But of course, this is the process of deliberation within the university. You have to set up a working group, you have to discuss with people. It's not something that you can just you have to think about it, what it means, and you have to explain it to people. But that all of that is feasible. I mean, it just takes a bit of time and, you know, effort. Okay, Miro, so Miro is going to talk a little bit about his experience as a funder with Coalition S.
Okay, that's perfect. Yeah. So hello, my name is Miro Pushnik. I'm coming from Central Technical Library at the University of Ljubljana, and I represent Slovenian Research Agency in Coalition as Leaders Group. CTK was asked to represent SRA in a coalition, so this presentation is based on my experience on work with colleagues there. Here is a short review. I will speak about the key reasons, then after about open science policy and new legislation in this area, then about consortia of regional scientific literature within the framework of the Coalition S, and on the end, a brief look into the future. Now, first of all, I would like to give you some framework, what we are talking about. Science and research in Slovenia. Slovenia is very small. So our budget of national funder is very near of 230 million euro per year. But this budget will be now increased by new law adopted last year. Now requires 1% of GDP. Currently, it's 0.3%, and this 1% will be achieved step by step. I think next year target is 0.6, a year after 0.8, and in 3 years 1%. This is huge increase. So thanks God, science is now recognized as a very important factor of development. We have approximately 8,000 to 9,000 publications yearly. This is very important data because on this data are based all activities regarding ensuring open access. However, not all of those 8,000 articles are such that Slovenian authors should ensure open access because they are not correspondent in all those articles. So we estimate 60 to 65% are such articles. And yeah, there are very near 40,000 researchers. Now, Slovenia, as you know, is a member of European Community as well as a member of European Research Area, and we have to respect policies in this field of those structures. So one of the key reasons why to join is that Coalition S principles are fully aligned with policy of European Research Area and policy of European Commission. This is very important, and this makes our work on national policies much easier. Then there are mostly involved, let's say, founders in countries which are more developed than Slovenia. So we are able to follow practice and solutions, and we are able also to implement some of them into our system of funding and assessment of research work. There are a few applications, journal checker tool, journal comparison system, and a few more. And yeah, we can use, for example, we use journal checker tool as official data source for researchers about which titles, which journals, which services are eligible to fund from grants or are, let's say, aligned with national funder policy. And also better starting point for negotiation with publishers. This is very, very important because, yeah, those non-disclosure clauses, etc., made this business very tough, and now we don't accept non-disclosure clause anymore. And also membership means also some kind of incentive for development of national open science policies. Now, a few words about better starting points. You have to know that publishers fragmented the market of scholarly journals, and they prefer to negotiate with the smallest possible isolated entities. Non-disclosure clauses reduce the transparency, and this result with large difference on terms of agreements reached among consortia. So you can pay more and have less service for than some other consortia, and this is not acceptable. And it's very important to say that smaller environments, like Slovenia are affected much more than some bigger countries. So it's very important that we are connected to structures that ensure good information and transparency regarding conditions agreed with publishers. And also, on the end, it's necessary it's very necessary to exchange professional information. For example, right now in the field of copyright, as I mentioned, also in the field of analytics, the attitude of coalition is to connect with some other data sources and services like ESAC, or Crossref, etc. And also exchanging information, we got also very good negotiation skills, which are very needed in face with publishers. Here is the picture of implementation roadmap of coalition S organizations. I will not repeat, as I mentioned. Membership does not mean any pressure. It's just a framework, it's just a platform to have very clear professional information and to make decisions based on this. For example, here, Austria, more developed funder, Austrian Science Fund, adopted all principles very early in 21. For example, Slovenia is not in such level, but I hope this year we will totally accept all principles. However, we are currently in a status, let's say, adoption to follow, and nothing wrong. We are here, we are present at the meetings, and we just, prepare situation home to. Here is a new act on scientific research, which is very important, and it's aligned with the principles of coalition S. Article 41 mandatory requires that all scholarly outputs, publications, research data, and all other outputs, softwares, etc., are open according to fair principles. And in one way, requires open access, but in another way, in some other process, increase budget from 0.3 to 1%. So, I mean, follow the needs. The implementing act or regulation, how to implement this act will follow. I hope that it will be adopted till the end of October. And also the one important act was adopted last year. This is a resolution of Slovenian Scientific Research Innovation Strategy with its action plan, which is actually a framework of funding Slovenian science until 2030. So we have very clear overview about money. Now, implementing act will follow the principles of coalition S according to eligible cost of open publication in the possibility of publication. And as I mentioned, it's currently in adoption phase. So for now, eligible cost for publications, funding from grants will be in fully open journals and in publishing platforms. Also, this document promote publications in journal with direct open model, encourage use of green open access under rights retention strategy, funding transformative agreements, and promoting responsible metrics. So it's very comprehensive, and yeah, it's important. Now, I will not repeat 3 ways of basic ways it was said about. So the key, maybe just once again, in all 3 ways, it's important that the researchers keep licensing rights. So in green way, classical green way, we've known up to now, this wasn't so. Now rights retention strategy ensure that rights are kept by researchers. Here is in detail. I will leave this presentation here. You can see, check. I just want to ask you, I advocacy for open science. However, I forgot to put the CC BY license on the presentation. Here is journal checker tool, print screen. So this title is aligned, for example, with our requirements or policies, national funder policies. This, for example, it's not. Here is a picture of rights attention strategy. I will just overtake this because, you know, it was said by Johan, very detailed. Now, funding the acquisition of foreign scientific literature through public funds is in Slovenia traditional, very developed. However, we have problem with budget each year. So, yeah, it's estimated that academic libraries in Slovenia spend approximately 7 million per year for electronic resources, and Slovenian Research Agency from these 7 millions at 5.5. Last year it was 5.5 million, so more than half. SRA primarily supports consortia, especially consortia and transformative agreements. There are two consortia in Slovenia, CTK, consortia CTK in our library, and COSETS. This is National Library Consortia. So how Slovenia funds open publication? SRA runs 2 annual calls for applications to fund open publication. One is one I mentioned just a slide before. It is each year call for co-financing of access to foreign scientific literature. So I mentioned 5.5, but there is one additional call, very important. It is called for reimbursement of costs of open publications. So researchers are able to get money back for APCs which paid individually. And yeah, consortia follows this data very in detail, because it's very important that if we notice kind of pattern that in some publications, for example, in some services with gold journals, let's say NDPI or I don't know, Frontiers, the amount of publications increase, then we are able to check does consortia agreement will bring better results and efficient results for us. So those two calls are very complementary. Oops. So based on this, here is a landscape, current publication landscape for Slovenian researchers. We try to ensure as much comprehensive as possible. And this is our infrastructure for open publication for now. So we have from transformative agreements, for example, Taylor and Francis, Science Direct, American Chemical Society, Oxford, Wiley, etc., to, for example, transformative journals, which this is especially category for now. Springer Link is treated as a service of form of transformative journals. Then we have some services which are fully adopted rights attention strategies. It's very important to know journals, family science. So this publisher AAAS adopted rights attention strategy. So if you publish in science, you will be able to publish through rights attention strategy without any problem. And we all know what science means. I mean, science is a great title. Yeah, very important. So this is our landscape, and yeah, I would like to advise you planning this this landscape, to do this as much comprehensive as possible, to ensure all possible ways to researchers that they will publish open, and yeah, they will be able to do this without frustration. I forgot to mention also Open Research Europe as a platform. I think so that platforms will be developed in the further years. So this is also kind of, let's say, a possibility. Now, some transitional provisions. Yeah, Slovenian Research Agency and Public Research Organization will now have 2 years to fully adapt their operations on principles of open science. What does it mean? This means they will have to share open publications. We estimate that between 60 and 70% of all publications now are open, but we expect that in the next 2 years, we will be very near to 100% to fully open all output. We talk about responsible research data management according to FAIR principles. Slovenia now is in a phase of setting infrastructure, especially in field of research data. Probably you heard about the new supercomputer in ISU Maribor. Now we build some repositories. We collaborate with international organizations, supporting services, as for example in our library. And that means also promoting the concept of, for example, early and open sharing, which is recommended practice in Horizon programs, and also citizen science, which is very important bridge between wider community and research community. Now, open science is not free of charge. I mean, we need money, we need funds. Funds from the resources funds for open science development in Slovenia in the next 10 years will come from the resources of the resolution I mentioned, action plan of resolution, and also for the funds for recovery and resilience plan. So I hope that I briefly described the current situation in Slovenia. And once again, I warmly invite you to join us in a coalition, because absolutely any obligation just benefits from your side. And also, please do not hesitate to ask me any questions then after, maybe via email or even now. And yeah, I would like to answer frankly and open. Thank you.
I don't know if there are any funders here or representatives of funders of the region, but if not, maybe speak to your funders and they can speak to me or to Miro. And also university, same thing for universities. If your universities are considering the right strategy, you know, drop me a line and I'll put you in contact with other universities who have done this. We also have a number of blog posts on our blog of universities that have adopted the right retention strategy. So the blog posts all have the same structure, so that's very informative of how they did it. So we ask them how they did it. You can go read and compare the various stories of the people who implemented this in their university.
Okay, but there are any questions? Maybe now. Okay, if not, then
everybody's hungry, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions in general? Any questions online?
No, I don't see any online questions, but I'll just ask.
It's a question, really, a suggestion to share with us a Slovenian example of policy or the law on funding of the open science, and also how the Slovenian Research Agency developed rules and a scoring system who will be funded for what. Because I had in May I was at the University of Banja, and we were at the Ministry of Education, Sport and Science, and they speak about the new strategy, new action plan, and actually how they wanted that the public money is spent on the open access and open science. And if I remember this correctly, there is a list of institutions that are financed directly from the budget, and they are scored in some way to ensure that they are open, that they are providing open science practices. So maybe for the audience, it will be interesting to hear about this national policy.
Yeah.
How does Slovenia set it up?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, this national policy is a part of the solution. It's not the policy itself, but it's a part of the solution. And yeah, the solution has many parts. From, let's say, core infrastructure, from developing project, developing regular financing, etc., etc. So first of all, we had to negotiate with funders. When the money were let's say, delivered, we had to fight for our share. Then after, I have to say that Ministry of Education has very good team. They recognize importance of open science, but on the end, we as a open research area member, we have to respect those let's say policies. And yeah, then after we start to build, and also then after we start to build an action plan. And there are some organizations, for example, our library as well, which will be funded directly. For example, our library will be funded for open science supporting center or network. I don't know how it will be formally named, and we will deal especially with support with open publication and with citizen science. For example, our library will build National Center for Citizen Science. Then there are some other institutions which will be also funded directly. And I have to say that Slovenia is a very small community. I mean, we are very small, and we understand that and recognize that integrated infrastructure is very important. So we try to build integrated projects, and yeah, probably this is the right answer, because we don't want to build, let's say, infrastructure organization, but the organization we would like to have one unique national infrastructure. We think that this is in such countries as Slovenia, so small countries, more efficient. This is an answer. Okay.
I now invite Luka and hoping I said that right. Luka to present.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Mirela. I come from the National Agency for Scientific Research and Innovation. It's a public agency under the Ministry of Education and Sport in Albania. And its mission is to support universities, but not only universities, but also research institutions in developing R&D projects and research infrastructure also. Before I share our experience in access to research infrastructure, our experience in access to research infrastructure, I would like to thank Snezana for the presentation of some findings with regard to Albania, and I would like to mention that there are some news, in fact, in Albanian national legislation with regard to openness to research with infrastructure. We are in the phase that we are drafting two main documents, policy documents. One is the strategy for scientific research, 2023-2030, and the other is the national law on science in Albania. And I'm the member of the working group, and I'd like to mention that we have adapted, in fact, in these two documents. In the first one, in the law, we have adapted the Article 41, in fact, from the Slovenian law with regard the openness to the science, and the law will be ready for approval by the end of this year, and I'm sure that the government will approve it because it's a necessity, in fact, for Albanian legislation with regard to development science in Albania. And we are, as I mentioned, we are drafting the new strategy, in fact, where the openness in science is one of the main strategic goal in the strategy. This is for the let's say national policies. These two documents that are in place, in fact. Of course, Albania is part of RCC initiative for open access to infrastructure, and that started in 2020. But before 2020, I would like to say that the Albanian government decided to invest in infrastructure, in research infrastructure in universities. And at the time, there were a big discussion. It is worth it to invest, for example, €500,000 in a faculty of natural science, where there are, for example, 25 students that are working in this lab or in this infrastructure, and some very few researchers. And at that time, the discussion was between the government and the researchers that we need this infrastructure, and there is a community that could use it, like business or like other universities of Albania and other universities in the region might use it. And at that time, as I said, the discussion was between government and the researchers. But later on, we had, when the investment was done, we had a very, in fact, big discussion with management of the university. So it was very hard to break their mentality that this infrastructure should be open, because they thought themselves like guardians of this infrastructure. Nobody had to touch it, nobody had to enter in it. So it was a very big discussion. So now we are in the phase where when researchers are drafting some protocols, manuals, how to use this infrastructure. And regardless that we do not have a clear law, in fact, a clear policy, national policy, how to use the infrastructure, we do have some documents, and we do have some, let's say, experiences, how we can be open and we can use openly this investment in infrastructure. So this is what I would like to share. In fact, it's a big challenge, fighting with, even with the community of researchers, because they are a little bit conservative and rigid in protecting their work and their assets of research. So this is what I would like to share with you. Thank you.
The next person on the agenda is not here, so we will not be able to have their views. But we have Ms. Srna Sudar online from Montenegro, from the Center of Excellence for Research and Innovation.
Hello, do we hear each other?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Dr. Srna Sudar, and I'm representing University of Montenegro on this workshop and meeting today as a the newly head of, no, I will not say newly, but as of last half a year, head of the project office at the university. But prior to that, I was the head of the Center of Excellence, as it is stated in the agenda. And related to our topic, I will share with you certain information and experience from Montenegro regarding the open science, as I was personally involved almost 2 years ago, together with the RCC, in developing the first framework of open access to research infrastructure at the University of Montenegro, which has been developed and adopted as one of the first universities in the region on 1st of October 2020. I was personally developing it and very proud of the document which sets the framework and give the basis for organizational unit of the University of Montenegro to develop their more detailed and on the level of the organizational unit open access to research infrastructure documents. Why? Because as you might know, University of Montenegro is, let's say, an integrative university, which means that the studies at the university encompass from natural sciences to social sciences, arts. So we have 19 faculties and 3 institutes, and all of them have different infrastructure that could be access or given to certain level of use to different actors. So this is something general on the level of policy from the University of Montenegro. However, when it comes to open science in Montenegro, I have to mention several things. And a part of the concrete documents related to the University of Montenegro, there is a national roadmap for European research era that was adopted in 2016. Then there is a strategy of scientific research activity that was developed for the period 2017-2021, and the revised roadmap for research infrastructure of Montenegro 2019 and 2020. In addition, in June 2020, government of Montenegro adopted a document which is called Program of Implementation of Open Science Principles in Montenegro with the Action Plan 2020-2022. However, we have a delay in realization of this planned activity document and planned activities. In addition, University and Montenegro is participating in the regional open science initiative. And also we are contributing to the IOSC, as was mentioned in some of the previous speakers. And in order to be efficient in that, University of Montenegro and the Faculty of Electrical Engineering, which is leading the initiative, national initiative, established a national initiative for open science through the project called NIFOS. And this has been established, I think it was established in 2021. The agreement was signed between several partners, I think 8 or 9 of them. The national coordinator for the Open Science Cloud Initiative, as I said, is University of Montenegro and the Faculty of Electrical Engineering. As we became a member of the IOSC Association as an observer since 2021, and we are a member of Open Air initiative since June 2020. So in a nutshell, I could give some more details regarding NIFOS project that we are implementing. It is a project, just few brief information, a project that is lasts for 42 in total, 36 plus 6 months. It started in September 2019, so it's still ongoing. And through that project, we established this national initiative and also a platform for open map platform, which will have 2 thematic services, open map and IoT cloud. And we also have the national IOSC promoter, national IOSC contact person, which is me personally. And also I'm the national contact person for Joint Research and the European Joint Research Center, which gives me access to the initiatives and activities on the European level that are relevant for Montenegro, also encompassing the field of open science. So this is, let's say, very briefly regarding Montenegro and achievements when it's come to open science activities. As also you might know, we have some, let's say, unstable political situation in past couple of years. So we are still waiting for the stable government and other activities from the national level to be implemented. So hopefully this will be settled in the next couple of months, and we will continue with efficient work.
Thank you very much.
We have someone from the online community raising their hand. So do we open the floor? So Juro, you had a question or a comment?
Just one more information. I know today we learn, we heard so much information, but still something what I expect actually from your guests from RCC. They should announce this, but anyway, I will tell as the author of number of documents published by RCC. Those are research infrastructure roadmaps for Banja, Kosovo, Macedonia, North Macedonia, and as well framework for research infrastructure roadmap for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Also, we wrote Western Balkan research infrastructure roadmap, which is not still on RCC website, but these four I mentioned are on the website. Why I'm mentioning this? Because very important question for our writing was, is there any open science or open access issues elaborated in research infrastructure in these economies, and particularly as for Western Balkan as a region. And if you open these four documents, which are now available on the RCC website, you will find for each infrastructure question, is it open, are they provide open access? And that's very important for all researchers in the region. And you will find a lot of infrastructures already with a policy of open access. This is just information, and you can find these documents and download it from RCC website. Thank you.
Thank you, Juro. And I've also put a link to the Balkan Innovation site where there are for research infrastructure roadmaps in the Western Balkans as well.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Juro. We still have an intervention by Vera Dimitrievska.
Exactly. She's online.
She's online.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Hello, everyone. Can you see me, or should I turn off the camera?
Yes, we can see you.
Hi, dobar dan. Okay, let me share the screen. Is it visible now?
Yes, just go to the full screen mode.
Yes, I will do it. Yeah. It takes a bit time because I have opened so many documents. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present something that is not much related to this event. Although I was listening to carefully and very interesting, I'm quite involved in some other projects that are related to open science and open access. So today I'm going to talk about funding opportunities by the Fund of Innovation and Technological Development of North Macedonia, especially the program that is running in this fund under the umbrella of education. So I will give you briefly a presentation of the fund and what current projects are actually funded by the program of education, and what is going next on in the future. So what the main vision of the Fund for the Innovation and Technological Development is a leading government institution for supporting startups and innovative companies in the Republic of North Macedonia, which was established in 2014. The main priorities of the fund are improved access to financial support for innovation and technological development and promotion and encouragement of innovation activity in the country. So the main activities actually include co-financing of startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises which are registered in the country, in the Republic of North Macedonia. There is a National Startup Council whose goal is the transformation of the Macedonian startup ecosystem. Then we have a corporate innovation program to encourage collaboration between the private sector and the startups. Then also we have a partnership with the Amazon Web Services, through which the fund provides loans for the use of the global platform in the amount of 10,000, 25,000, and 100,000 US dollars. Then there is a separate portfolio for investments in digitalization of agricultural and public institutions, development of a national strategy for artificial intelligence, and mentoring support for potential and current users. And then the fund also supports talented elementary, high school, and college students. The main portfolio actually of the fund is that has its financial instruments, which co-finance and also fully grant more than 750 projects with a joint investment of more than 80 million euros. Around 51% of the fund portfolio supports like 326 companies, which are startup companies, and mostly founded by the young people. With almost €1.5 million euros, the fund also supports the development of 3 accelerators in the country. So this is actually the education program, which is called Young Minds Fund, and which aims to combine the most proven successful program that encourages young creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship for the skills for the 21st century, with one big comprehensive program, which is called Young Minds Fund, which promote and support their implementation to enable young people to progress in the world of the future. Thus, the fund encourages creativity and innovation of young people, and also allow the young people to progress in the world of the future. So this is the second main program of the minds of the young people, which is called a challenge for young researchers. The main aim is to stimulate creative and critical thinking by finding answers of the previously identified questions and problems, and to nurture the curiosity by the young people to open up broad new horizons in a way that challenges conventional knowledge. Through this discovery process, students, teachers, and mentors can identify their abilities to improve their skills and collaborate to achieve common goals. Through this program called Challenge for Young Researchers, the fund supports research projects based on the scientific method, including aspects such as teamwork, inclusion, social cohesion, research ethics, and socioeconomic benefits. So far, we have supported 106 schools, primary and secondary, and total budget for this is like 300,000 euros. We just launched the last call for this year 2 days ago, so we're expecting to have more applicants till the end of the year. As part of this umbrella Young Minds for Future, actually we have another program which are more related to academia, and it's called Challenge for Establishing Production Laboratories, Fab Labs, Young People Create, which was initially announced in 2021. With the aim to provide young people with a spatial, material, and technical conditions to develop innovative products, services, processes, and activities, or methodologies that offer practical and social useful solutions for certain issues or problems, especially in technical science. These labs are placed for cooperation between the private sector, higher education, and scientific institutions, enterprises, and civil society organizations. The main target is actually young people aged between 15 to 29, which will be provided with free access, mentoring, space, and technical facilities to design and prototype small production of innovative solutions that they can test in those labs. As I mentioned, it is initially launched last year, and so far we have supported 3 labs in the country. Started in March 2022 with the implementation. So one is at the mechanical engineering faculty, the other one is at the Faculty of Technology and Metallurgy, and the third one is at electrical engineering and information technologies. The total budget is 188 and 1.59 euros. So the implementation will last like 12 months. All 3 Fab Labs are located in a higher education institution through different partnerships, so supporting the triple helix model, NGO, business, and academia. Since we have this kind of a program called Fab Labs, which are more focusing on prototyping and innovation, we decided to start a new call, which will be launched in a couple of days. Similar to Fab Labs is Makerspace, which aim is to provide young people in the community with a working spatial, material, and technical conditions for the acquisition and sharing of knowledge, especially research, where different tools from scientific and technological areas will be used in creative industries. These maker spaces will be open for young creatives and contain a wide range of equipment as an incubator of knowledge and technology for this century. The new call, as I mentioned, is already in place. Will be starting next week probably, and hopefully we're gonna get applicants from different industries, not only from technological and IT sector. So that was in general. I'm so sorry that it's not much related to this event, but somehow to give you broad perspective or to start up about the thinking about science and open access for those next generation who will come to those institutions and trying to apply for grants. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Vera. I had a question actually.
Yeah.
Are those sorry, thank you. Are those funding possibilities that you ask, are they subject to a mandate for open access?
The sound is not very good. Can you repeat, or you can write down the question?
So the research that you support with these actions has outputs, right, in the form of articles. Do I understand that correctly?
You mean for challenges for young researchers or for the Fab Labs?
No, any of those initiatives that you have mentioned.
No. We are not actually a research institution. We just are a funding institution.
Yes, but my question is, are these, when you give out these grants?
Yeah.
Are they subject to any requirement of the researchers to publish?
No, no, we don't have it. No, we mostly based on experiment method where we teach the young students what is research and what is the experiment. So basically basic research skills.
Thank you. Would you consider that in the future?
We would like to consider, but the situation is the colleague from Serbia was presenting in bad situation. So the regulation is kind of in place, but it's not implementing on declarative states. So it takes. I would love to have it what you have presented and to be implemented in the North Macedonia.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm usually loud, so the mic doesn't do me any favors, just makes it worse. But no questions, just maybe observations or remarks, and just bouncing off of what I heard so far. My name is Adona. I come from Portis University in Tirana, Albania. Two things. First, I'm a big believer in open access and what you said, and I think putting innovators or creators or whatever into a monopolistic position doesn't help matters, especially in realities as ours, where capacities are scarce to begin with. And if we just keep building walls and not really building blocks, it just hampers our ability to go beyond the domestic scale. And I think at our university we have started, but there's still a way to go to deliberate on how we can promote this better. But it's a matter of culture as well. We are very low trust societies, and it is instinctively coming to people to protect and adopt their default position is this one. It's a very protective one. And that applies in all aspects. It applies to researchers, it applies to management, it applies to the holders of the key of the lab, it applies to everybody, and it applies to startups. And I was thinking now, because we also have a maker space at our university, and we were trying to sort of support startups or students that want to prototype their ideas. And the first thing I heard, I was asking for advice from people who have done this before and whatnot. And the first thing they told me is, if you are going to work on a cohort basis, like mentoring a bunch of youngsters all together, you need to work on IPRs, because they are going to look at one another, and this is still a process, and maybe one is faster than the other to get the prototype out, but in the meanwhile, this was like a shared thing. So the first thing I heard was a solid, very rigid IPR system. So I don't know if at North Macedonia they have such a thing in place. It would be a good reference for us to have a look at. And the final remark, my tech literacy is non-existent, but I think I see a potential that I do have that, but I use the word of it. The thing is, though, I see potential maybe into using blockchain as something that can really track better all the co-creation process and sort of show the authorship of every step of the thing. So I don't know if there's anybody here in this room who has experience or have a thought on that as well. Sorry to take long. Thank you.
I don't have experience with blockchain. So co-created process where you want to protect your intellectual property.
May I just do a short comment, if you allow us? I'm not experienced in blockchain. I mean, this is. So please do not expect that I will explain you about how to use blockchain. But I will say and express totally agree with you. Open science means cultural changes, and this is very important. All aspects should be covered. And from, let's say, assessment to let's say transition from competitive science to collaborative science.
Yeah.
This is very important. I'm in this business for more than 30 years. I still do not know why researchers should compete for a budget. You know, and the share of stable funding should increase. I mean, now, for example, in some cases, we have the share of unstable, so budget which comes from course and grants this share is enormously high. And this is very important from different aspects. One very important is that we are losing young researchers because we have some cases that, for example, in our library now one librarian is employed like as a data steward. She is former researcher, and he is now 35, and he still in 35. He was not employed for a full time. I mean, this is something that all those small pieces, if you keep together, then you will see that this is a huge mistake. Competitive science. We have to support collaboration, and open science support collaboration. This is very important. And also about you mentioned that it's important that we understand about the EPR. We set a center for ensuring quality in scholarly communication. This is a part of our life. And this year, just this year, we employed full-time one lawyer, which is dealing only with licensing problems. Because this is necessary. Because we would like, if we want all those stuff we talk about, we want to ensure infrastructure. And this is infrastructure which is needed. We pay one FTE, but let's say this is investment, but the return is enormous. So I totally agree. It should be cultural change in CAT, especially in CAT of funders. There we have some problems, but yeah, we have to negotiate. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you, Mira. Any other observations? It says here we move to open discussion, questions from the audience, and including remarks and possible next steps. Any suggestions at this point?
Skip time. We can close the session.
Yes, yeah, yes. It's 10 to 2. We all are probably hungry for lunch, so I'd like to close the session, and I thank you very much for being here, for your contribution.
And before we leave for the lunch, I would like to thank to all our colleagues who were there today with us online. With this, we are finishing the public part of the event. And